And so I think this book's going to be a wonderful legacy for you, but you've left, or you're leaving, I should say, so much of a legacy through your humanitarian work, through the business world, and now with this book. I really would like to ask you this question because I think it'll help our listeners as well as me. We'd like to know. You touched on a little bit then when you were saying that there's there's negativity out there and finger pointing and whatnot. I'm wondering how you handle criticism and negative feedback yourself, because when you put yourself out there, we know that sometimes you do get that, and I'm wondering how you manage that when it happens to you.
John, I've never been criticized for anything in my whole life.
Well, I know you're married, so come on.
you know, I don't think anybody really likes criticism, but it's just part of life, and it's how we learn.
Yeah.
So you have to learn to not react or take it personally, but take it as a way to learn. What is it they're trying to say? Why are they so angry? And I think when you start hearing criticism, if you can, you start asking questions. What makes you feel that way? What makes you think that way? Usually, if you do that, you can get into common ground.
Yeah.
I had another great professor once, and the class was, we would take a week on, say, environmentalism, study all the pros, all the negatives. Then another week we'd take another issue, all the pros, all the negatives. And toward the end of the class, in another interview with a professor, he said, well, how do you like the class? I said, well, I love it, but I also hate it. He said, well, why do you hate it? I said, because I love being passionately devoted to a cause. And when I understand both sides, it's harder to do that. And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, Steve, that's the role of the educated man, to keep the both sides from killing each other while you try to work through solutions. And I have always loved that explanation and have tried to keep that in mind no matter where I was or what I was doing.
Got it. That's great advice. That's great advice. We have been exploring as well the difference between reacting and responding when you hear something. So I really appreciate that you've touched on that, because there's the ultimate, which is a challenge for a human being, is that anyone could say anything to you without you reacting in a negative way. That's almost like guru status, right? But or Buddha or Jesus or whatever. It's interesting that you've touched on that, because that seems to be coming up a fair bit lately, and maybe it's because of the world that we're living in at the moment, that when somebody says something to you, you don't have to react. You can take that pause, and it's the gap between what's said to you and what you do. It's been explained to me that's where freedom lives.
Yeah, you're right. This is where freedom lives. I think that's why peacemakers are so valued, because we don't have enough of them, either within families or communities or countries.
Yeah.
And those who can look at both sides without getting angry, without reacting, try to bring them together, those are the peacemakers, and we need more of that.
Couldn't agree more, Steve. And I've heard it also said, and sometimes, well, I've had to put this into my life as well, and I'm sure you have, and it's just worth mentioning it for our listeners and for us as well as we sit here and talk across the world, that sometimes you need to step up and be the one and put some things aside, regardless of whether you think you should or or why me or anything like that. It's like, if you have the capacity and the capability and can step up to be the one in whatever situation that is, in the peacemaker, the humanitarian, the business owner, if you can step up and be the one, that takes something. And there's so much joy and satisfaction in being able to do that.
Well, you're absolutely right on that. I think everybody has dreams. Everybody has things that they want to do. But sometimes we get those dreams beaten out of us, or sometimes we are embarrassed by them, or sometimes we just think we're inadequate. And so we stop We stop dreaming and we stop doing.
Mm.
And what we all need to do is just take that first step, take a little bit of action, do something, whatever it is. You may not get everything you're after. You probably won't the first bite, but you're going to get closer. You're
Mm.
going to
Mm.
get more knowledgeable. You're going to be better able to deal with it.
Mm. Mm.
But nothing goes anywhere without somebody taking the risk and taking that first step.
Yep. Yep. I love it, Steve. And I love the expression doing the thing gives you motivation to do the thing. So once you start, it can help you get motivation to keep going, to keep
You know,
going.
I don't know if you ever can remember, there's an author, probably the best selling author, business author, when his book Toward Excellence came out. This was quite a number of years ago. His name was John Peters. And one of the things he always talked about was ready, fire, aim. And people would first listen to that and say, "What are you talking about?" Sometimes you just have to do something and learn from it,
Mm.
and then recalibrate and get a little better, and then fire again. And
Mm. Mm.
we're not going to be perfect the first time. We're all going to make mistakes. That's
Yep.
how we learn.
Yep.
But we're not going to learn if we don't do something. I have two twin toddlers right now,
Yep.
all a dozen times an hour, it seems like, in a minute. Fortunately, their heads are really hard, but that's how they learn. That's how we learned. And
Yep.
they just get right back up and keep going at it. And we all have to do that.
Yeah, it's great to observe that and see how they're literally learning in front of your eyes. And lately, I've been learning about the parts of the brain that try and keep us safe. And it's really changing the way I look at things because for the survival of the species, the brain wants you to be safe. And it's one of its major priorities. So when you want to go outside of your comfort zone or follow your dream or take some action that you normally wouldn't, your brain is trying to stop you because it doesn't know whether that will be a safe action to take or not. So, one of the things that I'm realizing that we all have to do is recognize that. And there is a place for that, of course, because you don't want to be, touching a live or a fire, put your hand in the fire or something like that. But often when you are following your dreams and taking action, it's trying to make you safe. And so the tendency can be, I won't take that action. I will stay in my comfort zone. And then when you understand that your brain is just doing that and that's a natural way to think and that's okay to think, and thanks for sharing, I'm going to be taking the action anyway, that's where you are heading towards greatness and fulfilling what you want to fulfill.
You know, just last weekend, I was teaching some of my grandchildren how to rappel. And so we were out on a cliff. They hadn't done it before. And I don't know if you've ever been rappelling, but that first step where you're trying to lean off a cliff
Yeah,
is
yeah,
terrifying. Everything in your body says, don't do this. Don't do this, you idiot. This will
yeah,
kill you. You can't do this.
yeah.
And so you have to go through all kinds of things to get people to do it the first time, ease them into it. And then they do it. And they're bouncing around the cliff partway down, and they're so excited. They're screaming with joy. And
Mm.
they're so happy when they do it or get down and they say, I did it. I did it. But that's not what your body wants to do. Your body is trying to protect you. And, but sometimes we just have to push the boundaries a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And what a great example that is as well is that now the comfort zone or the boundaries have expanded. So those people could do that again, and the sensation or the feeling or the brain or your mind telling you not to do it would be less. It might still be there, but it'll definitely be less because it goes, okay, you've done this before, and you were safe, and so we can do it again. So it's really fascinating how once you do break out of your comfort zone and take action and do these anything that takes you out of there, your comfort zone expands because your brain says it's okay. We've done it before. But having that mindfulness and that awareness of that, I found is something that I'm glad we had the opportunity to speak about that today because I think people might get that intellectually, but then feeling it as you're doing it. So I'm going to encourage the listener who we are in their ears right now to have a think about what is something they can do, even something little that breaks them out of their comfort zone, that's safe, well, that doesn't put yourself in physical harm. And I challenge you to listen to your brain to say, I don't think we should be doing that. But you know that that is just your brain trying to keep you safe. And you know that you can take that action and move one step closer to your dream. So, what is that action that you can do, Steve? I want to know from people, don't you?
I do. And I'd probably go back to my talk from almost 50 years ago and say, just go talk to somebody you normally wouldn't say hi to.
There you
Start with
go.
that. Just
I love
start
that.
with that. Or try to have a conversation with somebody who you know has a different opinion than you do,
Mm,
and listen and ask questions. If you started with something simple like that, or maybe you have a dream that you've wanted to do something, well, what's something you could read about that, or somebody you could talk to about that, or some way you could
mm,
experience that so
mm.
you can get just a little closer?
I love that, Steve, and it's totally in line from what you were talking about before. You can it doesn't necessarily have to be a massive action, but something like saying hello to someone that you wouldn't normally say hello to, or someone that you meet as you are outside of your house in the world.
Exactly.
People like that too. That's what I found whenever I've done that. People are, firstly, they're a bit surprised, but secondly, they're open, especially if you do it with a smile. They're open to interacting with another human being.
You know, my youngest two sons are black, and we got them when they were just infants. And I had
Did
gone,
you adopt them, or
yeah,
they were foster kids? Or yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And we started the adoption process. My wife and I were in our 40s, and they said, "Well, will you take some handicapped children?" I said, "What do you mean handicapped?" I said, "Well, they're black." I said, "That's not handicapped." She says, "Well, we consider them hardship because we can't place them." I
Right.
said, "Well, I don't care what color a kid is. A
Mm.
kid's a kid." And so we ended up getting two at the same time, who one in Georgia and one in Washington, D.C. Turned out they were born about 3 hours apart.
Mm.
So I go to Atlanta to pick up the first one or the second one. And here's this middle aged man in airports with a black infant. And it was interesting. Black people would come up and talk to me.
Yeah.
They said, "Hi, oh, what a cute little baby. Where's he?" And they wanted to know more.
Yeah.
Not a single white person would. I think they would look over and think, "Oh, I wonder what's going on. Maybe his daughter got in trouble. I'm not going to say anything."
Mm, mm, mm.
And I talked to other white parents with black children, and they had the same experience. And somehow we've got to get past that
Mm.
feeling like we're embarrassed or something might be wrong, and ask
Yep.
a question or talk to people.
Yep. Yep. Another great story. It's been awesome to hear your stories. Have you got another story while we're talking about stories that you love sharing with people that you haven't shared with us so far on the show today?
There are about 60 stories in the book.
Oh, great.
So there's a lot of them that I haven't shared. One of them is just one of the traits that I try to teach is for people to have an awe of life. One of the ways I got more experience with that is that summer I went to Jackson Hole to learn to climb. Had a friend up there, and he said, "Oh, we've got to run the rapids. We've got to run to a place down the lunch counter." And the Snake River comes together, and there's big rapids as you go through. But we just jump in with our life jackets. Well, what he didn't tell us is we were doing it about a month before the rafters started, and it was high water, and it was called the lunch counter because when people went through it on the rafts, that's where they lost their lunch. So we drive down there, walk a long ways down from the road to the river, and like a bunch of lemmings, we put on our life jackets and just followed John off of the rock. And learned very quickly that when the water's that cold, you can breathe in, but you can't breathe back out. And you don't ride the rapids, it pulls you down. And so there were five of us. We had driven down a little old VW Volkswagen bus. I finally got out, couldn't see any of my friends. I was probably a quarter mile downstream by then, and I knew some of them had to be dead because I thought I was going to be. Climbed up the top, get back to the bus, and there they all were. Nobody said a single word. We were supposed to do this, 10, 15 times. We all got back in the back of that Volkswagen bus and rode back to Jackson. Again, never said a word. But each of us were laying there on the bottom of the bus, feeling the vibrations, and nothing had ever felt so good. It's just, I can feel this. I'm still alive. Isn't this exciting just to be here?
Yep.
And that was one of many, many lessons that I think we all have, that we begin to appreciate this incredible life that we have been given.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine the sense of gratitude having gone through an experience like that.
But don't get me started. I could tell stories all night here.
Well, I'd love to get you started. And I was just actually thinking that we're close to finishing for today, but I'd love to talk to you later in the year when the book's been released and hear all about that. And I'll get a copy myself, and I might be able to talk to you about some of those stories in the book as well. It's been wonderful having you on the show, Steve. I like to give my guests the opportunity. Is there a question that I haven't asked you that you would like to be asked, or that you thought that you would be asked today on the show?
I guess a question that I was asked going through life is, what makes you think you can do that? And I think we all ask ourselves that sometime.
Yeah.
I mean, I go off to Africa to try to make a difference with AIDS. I wasn't a physician, I wasn't a doctor, but I did have some skills, and I thought, well, maybe I could make a difference. So off we went. As it turned out, it's hard to keep track, but hopefully, with the work we did, we saved thousands, tens of thousands of lives. Not because I'm very smart, not very because I had the answers that other people didn't, but because I just put myself out there. And so I think the message I would like to get across people is, you can make a difference.
Mm.
You can do it. You can make a difference in other people's lives and make the world better. Just go do it.
Love it. Love your attitude. Love your mindset. And Rise and Thrivers, I'll have Steve's contact details in the show notes. And if you're listening to this after June 2025, have a look out for Stories That Shape Us, a guide to passing on wisdom, where we can read Steve's stories, learn from them, and he'll also teaches us how we can do the same to pass on the wisdom. Now, final question, Steve. We have a inspirational musical playlist on Spotify called Merkus Motivation, and I ask all my guests, what's the one song or tune that you would put on that really gets the fire in the belly and gets you going?
Last week, I was up north in Utah, and they were having kind of demonstrations for democracy at the Capitol, and the town I was in was called Provo, at the City Hall. And everybody was there, I don't know, hundreds of people, and they were periodically singing songs. And one of the songs they did not sing was We Shall Overcome. So I sang it myself, because that's always been a great song for me, growing up in the 60s and the civil rights demonstrations and
Yep.
through things throughout my life.
Yep.
And so if it's not on your list, I think We Shall Overcome is a wonderful one to put on.
I love that, Steve. I'll be putting that on right now as soon as we finish the interview. And that fits perfectly with the list, because now others can hear those songs, including that one. And if they ever need a bit of a pump up or a perk up, music's a great way to do that. And I'll have that. I'll have that on there. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Steve, man, loved having you on the show. You're always welcome back on the show.
I'd be happy to come back anytime.
Great. And as we say here on the show, Steve, stay awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Rise and Thrive Conversations for Greatness with John Merkus. Remember, you are loved, you are worthy, and you do matter. Embrace the journey of personal growth and motivation. Let's go out there and do something great. Follow or subscribe for more insights and inspiration every Tuesday. Until next time, stay awesome.